Hello everyone, and I'm here with another video. This is part 3 of what if Marvel had the opposite rights to their characters? Or what if the MCU had the opposite rights to their characters? This will be the conclusion of the cinematic universe part, because part 4 will be something like what if Fox owned the Avengers? Part 5, what if Sony owned Iron Man? As for part 6, I don't know who to go with for the Fantastic Four yet. I know some have said the Guardians of the Galaxy, but if we're talking the Guardians of the Galaxy, that wouldn't make too much sense because the 2005 to 2007 films would have to be the 60s version, but then by 2015, that would have to be the 2008 version, the version of the Guardians I'm more familiar with. Similar to how the Teen Titans, I'm familiar with like the 2003 version of the team. X-Men Evolution became like my introduction to the X-Men. I became familiar with that X-Men lineup until I learned more about them. As for Justice League Unlimited, it kind of made me feel familiar with the Justice League until I learned more about them, but same could be said for the MCU Avengers, but still, let's just get into part 3, shall we? The first movie would be X-Men Dark Phoenix. This would be the Civil War equivalent, and it would be like an X-Men movie, but is also kind of like an Ultimate Alliance film. Plot would be similar to, Bryan Singer's pitch. One of the new members would be Cannonball, played by Sam Claflin, and someone like Angel, played by the same actor who played him in X-Men Apocalypse, as well as Psylocke, who I could possibly picture being played by Karen Fukihara, maybe. Some Ultimate Alliance members that would appear would be Spider-Man and Black Panther. And of course, this would be the introductions of Blade and Iron Man, played by Mahershala Ali and Logan Lerman. Or Dylan O'Brien for Iron Man. And of course, some of the deaths would be Emma Frost and the Hellfire Club. This would also introduce Bishop, played by Omar Sy, still, as well as Sunspot. But at the end, the Ultimate Alliance starts to crumble. Mainly because Storm joins Black Panther's side and leaves the X-Men, which is where things start to crumble a bit. And of course, this would set up their eventual reunion in the third Ultimate Alliance film. Next movie is Doctor Strange. Movie is mostly the same, except there would be a cameo from Blade at the end, which would replace the after credits scene with Thor. Next movie would be Spider-Man 4. It was tricky to figure out a plot, which I had initially considered going with the Clone Saga storyline, given what I've done with Jackal. But here I'm going to go with the Sinister Six. They would be Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Shocker, Vulture, Beetle, and Rhino. And of course, Peter would start taking Miles Morales as like his sidekick. The film would even adapt elements from the death of Spider-Man's storyline, except Spider-Man doesn't actually die. But who dies are Octavius and Vulture, who die redemptive moments. And during the final battle, Norman Osborn would become the ultimate Green Goblin. Even Aunt May dies. And at the end, Spider-Man, Black Cat, and Miles are like a team after defeating the Sinister Six as they face off the villain known as Mysterio at the end. Next movie is Fantastic Four: Annihilation. The film would adapt elements from the Annihilation storyline, with Doctor Doom and Annihilus returning. As for Annihilus, I would picture Toby Kebbell playing him. And Doom would fight Reed over Sue's feelings. And in the end, Doom and Annihilus are assumed to have died. And the movie ends with Sue and Reed's wedding, despite the loss of Franklin Richards, Sue and Johnny's father. And an after credits scene would reveal who is Annihilus's master. That would be Kang the Conqueror. Next movie is Iron Man. I would probably call it something like Iron Man Armored Avengers, something like that. But this would act as the second reboot of Iron Man, as he's placed in a high school setting with James Rhodes, played by John Boyega, and Pepper Potts, played by Abigail Cohen. Though Tony has feelings for Bethany Cabe, who I could picture possibly being played by Sophie Turner. But the main villain would be someone like Crimson Dynamo, who I could picture being played by Ron Perlman. And as for a secondary villain, that would be someone like Killer Shrike. I think that's his name. And there would also be the setup of Unicorn, which never gets resolved until Iron Man 4. And of course, Bethany leaves. Next movie is Black Panther with Shadows of Wakanda. This would see the conclusion to the Black Panther trilogy. And the villain would be Achabi, who manipulates both M'Baku's tribe against the Wakandians. And it's up for T'Challa and Storm and Shuri to defend their home. Claw would also appear, and there would be a fight between him and Killmonger, which Killmonger is severely wounded. And Killmonger is like, Akabi's henchman. And of course, during the final battle, M'Baku would sacrifice himself to save T'Challa from Claw, as he and Claw both die. And Killmonger is fully recovered, and then he and T'Challa team up to defeat Akabi, bringing that storyline from Phase 1 full circle. Even though Killmonger dies in the process. And in the end, T'Challa and Storm are married, as they become the new king and queen of Wakanda. But an after credits scene would showcase Kane, who I would picture being played by someone like maybe Giancarlo Esposito, for seeing the threat that not only the Fantastic Four, but Black Panther represent to him. Next movie is Blade. The movie would be similar to the plot of Mahershala Ali's film, but instead of taking place in the 1920s, it would take place in the present day. Next movie is Ultimate Alliance, the Kang Dynasty. This would be the culmination, part one, of the two-part storyline. As the multiverse is starting to collapse, Peter and Felicia are now living together, as Felicia is now pregnant with Peter's child. But, however, they can't enjoy a happy moment because of the incoming multiversal incursion. And of course, the X-Men are forced to regroup. And the Ultimate Alliance as a whole are forced to regroup. However, Doom has some allies with him. Those would be Annihilus and Kang, with Kang leading the charge, along with Miles Warren, who has successfully become the Jackal. And we would even see Kane's backstory and how he was a descendant of the Richards family in the far future, and how he wanted to be a hero like them, but was ended up being corrupted by his own ideologies after being wronged by his family, believing that he should be more like other heroes such as Black Panther and Spider-Man. And knowing Iron Man, Spider-Man would get the Iron Spider suit, but it would be more the red and gold suit from the comics. And then, during the climax, there would be an Avengers versus X-Men fight. And that would be the Avengers facing the Fox X-Men Avengers. Yeah, the X-Men versus the Avengers. However, some members of the X-Men, like Havoc, Colossus, and Bishop, die. And Johnny Storm is also killed, leaving Sue traumatized. First, she lost her father, and now she lost her brother. And she cannot let the same thing happen to her husband, Reed. And at the end, Doom kills Kane and becomes God Emperor Doom. And then Kane, of course, possesses, Doom, and Kane is now in control of Doom's body. And then Battle World happens. Next movie is Daredevil and Elektra. The film would focus on Daredevil meeting Elektra. And it would also include the Punisher and borrowing elements from the Punisher storyline from the Netflix series. But the villain would be Typhoid Mary and the Owl. And this film would explain where Daredevil was during the Kang Dynasty, as the after credits scene would show the multiverse incursion happening. Next movie is Rogue. This movie would explain Rogue's absence in Kang Dynasty, as we focus on her and Gambit's relationship. As for the villain, that would be someone like Destiny. And of course, Avalanche would be a side villain. Next movie is Ultimate Alliance Secret Wars. This would be the end of the Kang saga, or as I would call it, something like the Multiverse saga or the Incursion saga. I don't know. But Battle World happens. Some of the Avengers are lost. Same thing with the X-Men. Tony would meet the two Iron Men play. One of them being played Robert Downey Jr. while I'm still trying to figure out the Sam Raimi version. Other survivors would be Captain America, Black Widow, Thor, and Hulk, as well as Ant-Man, while the rest of the Avengers are, dead. As for how they're going to stop God Emperor Doom is tricky. But first they have to fight off Annihilus, and this leads to the death of Ant-Man, as well as the death of Angel. And then the final battle would happen with all the heroes coming together to stop God Emperor Doom. And in the end, Wolverine would sacrifice himself to defeat God Emperor Doom and restore the multiverse back to the way it was, with the help of Doctor Strange. Now, consequently, the timeline is restored. Peter and Felicia now are retired, leaving Miles as the new Spider-Man, because at some point, Felicia gives birth to Richard Parker, the Hardy Parker II. Johnny is back from the dead, and soon now has her family as a whole back. The X-Men mourn the loss of Wolverine and Angel, but a new Wolverine would come into play. That would be X-23. And of course, Rogue still prefers to be out of the X-Men's conflict. And at the end, she's revealed to be pregnant with T'Challa's child. And Daredevil would hear the news of Bullseye and Muse on the run. And he's accompanied by not only Elektra, but also Punisher. Next movie is Iron Man 2, which I'm not sure what would go to for Iron Man 2 be. But the film would see more of the relationship between him and Pepper begin to slowly develop. And of course, has conflict with Happy, which would have started since Armored Avenger. I probably would say the conflict is more so how they were once best friends since they were children, but things are starting to fall apart. And Tony needs to keep that relationship stable. For who I could see as Happy, that's pretty tough. Maybe Dacre Montgomery, but Tony would have been taken in by Rhodes' mother, who I could picture being played by, I would say, maybe someone like Viola Davis. But the villain would be Spy Master. who I could picture someone like Nathan Fillion playing him. And in the end, after Iron Man defeats Spy Master with the help of Rhodes, who becomes War Machine in this film, Spy Master reveals Iron Man's identity to the world, that of course being Tony Stark, which is resolved in Iron Man Armor Wars, where Tony reunites with the other two Iron Men, and they have to take down the villains of past Iron Man films, those being the Mandarin, Ironmonger, Whiplash, someone like the Technovore, and Living Laser. But that's all I have to say for Phase 3 of What If Marvel had the opposite rights to their characters. Anyways, I will see you all later.